Welcome back, scientists. It's great to see you again. It's Mrs. Booth here, ready to do some more biology with you all, looking at our rainforest ecosystems. So, today we are going to be looking at food chains. That is how producers, those plants that make their own energy, and consumers, those animals that have to eat things to get their energy, work together in our ecosystems, our communities of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. So let's get ready with a quiz. Are you ready for a quick fire round of true or false questions? 1. Giant bamboo plants in the rainforest can grow up to 22 centimeters a day. That is just under a length of a ruler. Every day they can grow that long. True or false? 2. The largest animal in the whole world, the blue whale, lives in the rainforest. Rainforests get at least 250 centimetres of rain a year. About 25% of our medicine comes from rainforest plants. True or false? Howler monkeys are so loud they have to cover their ears with their hands when they howl. In the rainforest of South America, sloths move so slowly that algae, that microorganism, grow in their fur. Have a look through those questions again. Which ones do you think are true? And which ones do you think are false? Let's see if you were right. I'll move my face so you can see. Absolutely, the first question, giant bamboo plants do grow up to 22 centimetres every single day. Absolutely amazing. Think how tall they could be over a week. Blows my mind. Number 2, the largest animal in the world, the blue whale, lives in the rainforest. Well, we know that there are pink dolphins in the rainforest, but are there blue whales? Blue whales' habitats are in the ocean. They are not in the fresh waters of the rainforest. They are in oceans, and they definitely wouldn't survive in the Amazon. Just too big. Rainforests get at least 250 centimetres of rain a year. Yep, they do. This one, if you've been listening to my facts in the last session, you'll know that they do. Medicines do come from, 25% of our medicines do come from rainforest plants. Howler monkeys, think about the name. Howler monkeys are so loud they have to cover their ears with their hands when they howl. No, but they are the loudest animals. They are very, very, very loud, but they do not cover their ears. In the rainforest of South America, sloths move so slowly that algae grow in their fur. What do you think? They move so slow that they have microorganisms that can grow in their fur. They can. Crazy. How did you do on the test? Well, it wasn't really a test. A quiz. Maybe you should try these out with some of your family. Today you're going to need a pencil or pen, a ruler, and your workbook or a piece of paper. If you need to, pause the video now and you can go and get those things. Today's key vocabulary. Energy transfer. We know what energy is, and transfer means moving from one place to another. So how does energy move from one place to another? We'll be looking at that today. Producer. What's a producer? It's an organism that makes its own energy. Excellent. Primary consumer. Let's look at the second word, consumer. Are animals that eat to get their energy. Fabulous. Primary. Have you heard that word before? I hope so. Lots of you probably go to primary school. That is your first school. So what might primary consumer mean? First. Consumer, the thing that eats first. Secondary consumer, primary school. secondary school, the second consumer, and finally tertiary. Say the word tertiary. Let me hear you. Tertiary consumer. Third, good guess if you were working out the 1, 2, 3. Tertiary is the third consumer. Let's get learning. Let's just recap. Producer or consumer? Rabbit. What do you think that is? A producer or a consumer? Definitely a consumer. This wonderful rainforest plant, look how beautiful and pink it is. Is it a producer or a consumer? Yes, it's a producer. Brilliant. This rainforest plant is a producer. And finally, one of these sneaky mammals in our rainforest, tiger, is a consumer. Look, he's ready to pounce. Scary. So, we are now delving a little bit more deeply into the ecosystem and how the ecosystem works together. What's an ecosystem? Didn't hear you. Community. A community of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. Brilliant. You'll be experts with the word ecosystem by the end of these lessons. So, how are the organisms in an ecosystem connected? How do they get connected? Well, they are all connected by the transfer of energy. Energy connects them all in some way, and we are going to begin to look at how they are connected in this lesson. Let's start with a producer. Let's look at grass. You can see grass around you. Probably if you look out the window, you might see some grass. Grass is a plant that grows, and it means that it is a producer. It creates its own energy using sunlight to form it using photosynthesis in its cells. Producer. What consumes this producer? Well, we could say a rabbit will eat the grass. So a rabbit is the primary consumer. It is the first animal to eat that producer. So energy flows from the grass into the rabbit. The rabbit gets its energy, takes its energy from the grass when it eats it, when it consumes it. What consumes the rabbit? Well, a fox will eat the rabbit, and the energy from that rabbit is moved into the fox. So we have our producer that creates its own energy. The energy from the producer goes into the rabbit when it is consumes, and that is the primary consumer. The secondary consumer is the consumer that eats the primary consumer, and the energy flows into the fox when it eats the rabbit. Finally, we have the bear. Now the bear will eat the fox, and the energy from the fox is moved, transferred from the fox into the bear. The bear is the third consumer in our chain, and it is the tertiary consumer. Tertiary means third. So it started with our producer. Energy is transferred when the rabbit consumes the grass. And then when the fox consumes the rabbit, energy is transferred again. And when the bear consumes the fox, it is transferred again. This diagram that you've just seen in front of you is called a food chain. It's how biologists explain the transfer of energy from producers to consumers in an ecosystem. So we are going to have a go now at building a food chain together. So you'll need your pen and pencil, you'll need your ruler to draw your energy transfers, and you'll also need to be able to label. So probably get your paper out ready. How do we draw a food chain? Now you'll see the picture on my screen at the moment is not quite scientific. It's got some pretty pictures and the arrows kind of go in different places and it shows the habitat. Our diagram does not need all these pictures in. We are just going to take the names and show which way the energy is transferred, which way the energy is moved. The food chain shows the transfer of energy. So, Step 1. Have a look at the animals that we are going to be showing in a food chain. Have a close organisms, should I say, not animals, they're not all animals. Have a look at the organisms that are on our picture and think about how energy might be transferred. The first step that we are going to take is we're going to find the producer. We need the producer first because that is the organism that creates its own energy. It's the beginning of our food chain. So our producer from these organisms is this lovely green leaf. We've got our producer, and we are left with 3 other organisms. Now I'm going to look for the herbivore because I know that herbivores consume producers. They eat plants. So which of these do I think is a herbivore from these 3 organisms? Well, I know that this is a leaf cutter ant, and ants eat plants. So here we have our producer creates its own energy in its leaf, and then we have our primary consumer, which is going to be our leaf cutter ant. After I've found my herbivore, because that's the plant eater, I can look for a carnivore. It's going to have to eat my animal, or perhaps a one that eats both plants, an omnivore that eats both plants and animals. If I look at these, I've got an armadillo and a cougar. The armadillo is more likely to eat the ants. And the final step, once I have found my secondary consumer, is to think about a carnivore that is going to have less predators than anyone else. And here we've got the cougar with its sharp canine teeth ready to pounce. So once we have all of these notes, we're going to start with our diagram. First, I could just draw a simple leaf and write leaf. Underneath, I would need producer. Can you do that now? Once I have done that, I can draw my energy transfer arrow. It goes from the leaf to the primary consumer. It doesn't go the other way, it doesn't eat the other way. The energy flows from the leaf to the consumer. The leaf is the producer that's produced its own energy, and it moves from the leaf, transfers into the primary consumer, which is the leaf cutter ant. Now the leaf cutter ant is eaten by the armadillo, and so the energy is transferred from the ant into the armadillo. We started with the leaf, creates its own energy. The energy is transferred to the leaf cutter ant when the leaf cutter ant consumes the leaf. He is the primary consumer. When the armadillo eats a leaf cutter ant, he has an energy transfer from the ant to the armadillo, and he is the secondary consumer. And finally, we have our cougar. The cougar eats the armadillo, and the energy is transferred into our tertiary, our 3rd tertiary consumer. And we have our own food chain. Pause the video here so you can see whether you've got your food chain drawn out. Brilliant. So, your task independently now is to follow the steps that we have just done to create a food chain yourself. I have given you 4 animals that you would find in a rainforest ecosystem. There's the flower, a blue morpho butterfly, a red-tailed hawk, and an adder. So, have a good look at those 4 organisms. Now think about your steps. Find the producer, then find the herbivore, then find the omnivore or a carnivore, then finally think about the carnivore, which has got few other predators, few other animals that will eat him. Top tip, when you're drawing your food chain, make sure your energy transfers go from one to the other. Who is the first bit of energy? That producer. And that arrow goes from the producer to the consumer. In a moment, you're going to be pausing this, and I'd like you to draw your own food chain. Okay, good luck. Pause. How did it go? Did you use a ruler for each of your energy transfers? Did you check those arrows are going the right way? Let's have a look. Here is the answer. The flower is the producer. The blue morpho butterfly is the primary consumer. Blue morpho butterflies are eaten by adders, and the energy transfers into the secondary consumer, which is the adder. The adder is eaten by a red-tailed hawk, and there we have energy transfer from the secondary consumer into the tertiary, the third consumer. Did you get it right? It was a bit confusing between the adder and the red-tailed hawk, wasn't it? But well done. Excellent job. Now have a look at this food chain. What do you notice? Yes, it's one that we've seen before. But is there anything wrong about it? Anything that isn't quite working? Yeah, it looks like that the energy is going the wrong way. This looks like that energy comes from the fox to the rabbit, which would mean that the rabbit would have to eat the fox. Definitely isn't what happens in the real world. It's really important that your arrows go in the right direction, that they start with where the energy began and they go to the next stage rather than backwards. So it should look like this, starting with the producer, creating its own energy, and then moving from there to the primary consumer, to the secondary consumer, and to the tertiary consumer. That's how we make our food chains. Excellent work, everyone. Really, really impressed with your food chains today. Remember, when we talk about food chains, we're talking about the energy transfer from one organism to another. And if we're thinking about our ecosystem, it's how they work together, how organisms, which are producers, which create their own energy, give energy to others, transfer energy to others. So energy transfer from producers, which make their own energy, and then to primary consumers, consumer eats for energy, secondary and tertiary, that third consumer. Often they are the top of the food chain, the predators of the world. Now, in our next session, we're going to look a little bit more deeply into what this actually looks like in an ecosystem, because we have taken a very simple chain and looked just at one animal that consumes our producer, but in real life, we can have many things eating our producers at once, which makes our chains just a little bit more complicated. So we're going to be learning about what a food web is. Well done for an excellent session of learning, and I will see you in our next lesson. Goodbye.